Hello and welcome to another edition of the WorkplaceTech Spotlight. Good morning, SHRM family. My name is Guillermo Corea, Managing Director of SHRM Labs, SHRM's Workplace Innovation Lab. I'm your host for this series where we shine a spotlight on some of the most interesting future of work topics, innovators, and disruptive technologies. Before we get going today, which I'm pretty sure this is going to be a very, very hot topic. I can just see all the comments that have been coming in, and it is fantastic. Just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. So next week we're going to be hosting our first SHRM Tech event in the U.S. SHRM Tech NorCal is being held at the Grand Hyatt San Francisco, March 7th through the 8th. This is the premier HR tech event for the HR decision makers that want to lead workplace innovation. There's a few seats left available, so be sure to grab yours and hope you can join us. Also, for those of you who are watching on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, please share this live stream and tag SHRM. You can use the hashtags SHRM Labs as well as Workplace Tech. So today we're going to touch on a topic that should be top of mind in every company and especially with executive teams, and that is the mental health and well-being of your employees. There is a workplace mental health crisis in America. There is no question about it. Burnout, exhaustion, and hopelessness are common among workers than ever before, while pandemic-related stress continues to chip away at productivity. The pandemic wreaked havoc on employees' mental health and companies' bottom lines. According to the World Health Organization, there's been $1 trillion worth of lost productivity for the global economy due to workers' anxiety and depression. So the need to act is dire, not just for economic reasons, but also to protect the number one resource that companies have, and that's its employees. As reported by SHRM through our 2022 Mental Health in America report, of the nearly 53 million U.S. adults with a mental illness, only 46% have access to mental health services. While workers need more support from their employers, they don't necessarily know where to turn within their organizations. And honestly, the solution is hiding in plain sight: the human resources department. HR professionals can play an essential role in curating mental health resources, connecting workers with support, and educating people managers about supporting their staff and being more empathetic, all of which helps to create a workplace culture that is mental health friendly, a world of work where employers and employees thrive together. So joining us to talk about this topic today is Ariela Safira, CEO and founder of Real. Ariella, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the stage. And I can tell you this is definitely a hot topic. So before we begin, maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about yourself as well as Real.
Of course, and it's so great to see you, Guillermo. Hi, everyone. My name is Ariela Safira. As Guillermo shared, I am the founder and CEO of an innovative new mental health care company called Real, tackling many of the issues I'm sure you all face and see firsthand. A little background on me: I've worked in mental health care for the past 10 years, never as a clinician, always on the innovating side of things, and like so many in the field, became passionate about it when a friend had a very traumatic experience with her own mental health. And that journey really showed me what the mental health care system looks like and how broken it is, right? How poorly scalable, unaffordable it is, and how for the vast majority of people, they don't reach care until serious crisis. So I spent the next 10 years really determined to build a better solution and got to work at some really exciting places, both in the US and also at the world's most innovative mental ward in England, to really see and determine how can we build a solution that really works for our country. So thrilled to be here and excited to dive into this topic.
Fantastic. So let's jump right in, because this is just going to fly by, and I have a feeling that people are going to be saying that they want more. So we'll give them more later on. But let's discuss the issues and challenges, right, that you're seeing in your work with employee retention, mental health, the importance of empathy, right? What kind of information have you collected around mental health in the workplace, especially because of, your company relies heavily on data to make decisions, right?
Yeah, of course. I'll start by saying, last year alone, 76% of American workers had reported a symptom of mental illness. And when you add on top of that we only have enough therapists in this country to deploy one-on-one therapy to 7% of Americans, you see the huge gap between how many people need care, clinically need care, and how many therapists that are actually available to deploy that care, right? So often what we think of is we need to stop trying to overburden the clinical workforce when there simply aren't enough people. And instead, we need to build something that scales beyond the capacity of one-on-one such that we can support care or provide care, not just to the 76% of workers who already have a symptom of illness, but to all workers to ensure that we're preventing crisis and not just waiting until rock bottom. And we'll add to that, the reasons why we don't want to wait until rock bottom, especially for those who are watching today, the reasons are largely driven by the workplace and the negative impact mental health or mental illness has on workplace. And we see that in turnover rates. We see that in absenteeism for frontline workers, think store associates, baristas. What a decline in mental health looks like is lower customer NPS, increase in store theft. We see a direct correlating line between folks who are a decline in mental health and employees who face customers, and then the actual business performance as driven by those customers.
Yeah, and you're definitely seeing mental illness skyrocketing around the country, right? Is that a safe assessment?
Over 50% of Americans will experience a mental health illness at some point in their life. And again, last year's 76% was a dramatic increase. And not only is that increase in mental illness or symptoms, we're seeing, unfortunately, a really dramatic increase in suicide rates. I want to say in the past 10 years alone, our suicide rate is nearly doubled, which is a dramatic and detrimental figure we should all be working to solve.
Absolutely. So, and thinking about the root of the problem, right? When you look at the data that you've collected, what are the results that you've been able to draw from, the issues surrounding mental health? Or is there anything that your research has revealed about this issue, and how can employers, address them?
Yeah, so I'll start with the biggest financial figure, which is that we're losing $50 billion per year in lost productivity due to depression alone. And that's depression alone. From there, we have a slew of mental health conditions that are not even acknowledged. So financially speaking, employers are dramatically losing in this regard. And then when we take a step forward and think, okay, we already know mental illness is causing really serious impacts on the bottom line. We know it's driving cultural issues. And then when we look at what mental health solution utilization looks like today, we scoff, right? While 76% of US workers faced a mental illness or symptom of mental illness last year, average utilization rates for mental health benefits are 2%, right? We see no one utilizing today's benefits. And so I think while we're already seeing the financial impact of a decrease in mental illness for workplaces, what we then have to look at is just having a mental health solution isn't enough. We have to identify, is this working for our population to actually improve that productivity and save a lot of those otherwise lost costs?
Fantastic. What about in regards to underrepresented populations? Because that's certainly something that we've seen here at SHRM, and I'm sure you guys are seeing it as well.
Yeah, it's a massive problem, right? Over 90% of psychologists are white. And that means that today, 99% of people of color will never get access to effective one-on-one therapy. We simply do not have a diverse enough workforce of therapists and enough therapists to support those who identify as any race transparently, but it's dramatically worse for populations of color. So we need to be building on solutions that really reach those demographics, given the diverse population that makes up our country and our workplaces.
Right. And in thinking about, the access, right? What does some of your research tell you about, how long it takes for somebody to be able to see somebody, right?
Yeah.
I know of various cases where people try getting in the door, and even just getting in the door, they're not able to get in there, right?
Yeah, 100%. Well, as started by saying, how few therapists are available. And when we think of that was the clinician perspective. When we think of the client or the person perspective, today it takes an average of 11 years after facing symptoms of mental illness for people to actually receive care. Compare that to any physical illness we might experience. How long does it take us to see a primary care physician when our head is banging, when our stomach is aching? How long does it take us to grab an Advil? Like, it's considered long to spend a few weeks sitting in physical illness and not receiving care. And yet when we make that comparison to mental health care, it takes 11 years, right? And then once individuals actually do seek treatment, the cost of that treatment is dramatic. Right? Even if an employer covers 3, maybe 12 one-on-one therapy appointments, we know that those who reach crisis need very much more. And the average cost per session is $250 out of pocket. Needless to say, that is a price point that the vast majority of Americans can't come close to affording.
Right. And so there's the cost, right? The accessibility, and these problems tend to manifest themselves at different, it could be 1 o'clock in the morning when somebody is hit with an issue, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's safe to say that there's that, how should I put it, accessibility problem as well of like when you can reach somebody that can actually handle your problem, right? It's not something that's available 24/7. So what happens in that regard?
I mean, yes, to that point, again, we barely have enough therapists for any hour of the day. But when you add to that, for the majority of therapists, rightfully so, they're working during working hours, right? And when you think of, we can all relate to this. When we think about Monday at 1 p.m., when we might get a one-on-one therapy appointment, Monday at 1 p.m., I'm thinking about my board deck, right? I'm not tapping into my childhood traumas. Catch me Friday at midnight, and I have things to talk about. And that is consistent across the vast majority of individuals. The hours of the day that people are seeking care are most noted predominantly after 11 p.m. And again, those are hours of the day that therapists are not available, and in my opinion, should not be available. They too are working adults who deserve working hours the rest of us do. And as a result, we need to really be thinking outside of the box of one-on-one therapy. I mean, one-on-one therapy can work for an individual. That being said, I'm confident in saying one-on-one therapy is not the solution to our nationwide mental health crisis.
Exactly. So, in speaking about the solutions, right? What, are there any tips from your own experience as a business leader, related to navigating employee mental health issues that you can share with the audience?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying, holding ourselves first and foremost, yes, there's benefits and solutions. Let me start by saying, I should say that HR leaders are often tasked to solve for mental health needs. And what I consistently believe and hear more and more from benefits leaders is benefits leaders don't have the tools to be therapists. They don't have the trainings to be therapists, right? And so they need support from external organizations, companies, benefits. So one, we need to offer those resources and support because it is an incredibly difficult problem to solve that requires training that we don't offer HR leaders in. And second to that is when we actually bring in those benefits, we have to hold ourselves accountable for utilization rates and outcomes that we're simply not seeing in care today. And then to really roll those out, we have to demonstrate and embody openness to getting care at the leadership level. And, I will say, as not just a company leader or CEO, but a CEO of a mental health care company, I understand firsthand how hard it is to be held accountable, to be openly vulnerable to your company, right? I understand it's not something that most of us are well-versed in or comfortable doing. And we too need training in that. And that's something that needs to be offered at the leadership level. So it's not as simple as saying, leaders, start speaking openly about your mental health, right? Like, leaders, tell people that you went to therapy. Like, that's, leaders also haven't been trained in that. It's a very difficult thing. And so if we expect that change, which certainly does drive org-wide cultural change, then we have to provide that training and support to leaders as well and allow them to take the time to learn how to really offer that vulnerability in ways that we believe will impact the workplace.
So do you see that as the first step here? And at the beginning, I basically said, hey, this should be top priority especially for executive teams at companies, right? So do you see that as the first step where, there's a gap here where everybody understands mental health is a major issue, but let's get right to it. The executive team needs to be trained on this as well, right?
I'm going to say there's a first step and a really close tie for like a quick next step. So first step, yes, executive team needs to be trained in this because the executive team needs to be the one role modeling this. And shortly after that, we need to ensure there are benefits that the rest of the workplace can utilize such that once they are well-versed in mental health and open for care, they actually have care available to them. And something I've just heard a people leader of an immensely massive organization talk about this, and what she specifically named, and I've seen this consistently across some organizations, is we made huge efforts to celebrate the conversation of mental health in the workplace, to openly talk about getting care. And then all of our employees tried getting care on our benefits and there was nothing available. No therapists available, wait lists were 3 months long. And so we almost feel like we hurt our employees, that we worked so hard to encourage them to seek help when they need it. And then we failed them. Our help didn't work. And so I don't blame any workplace for this because, historically we've had this outdated approach of one-on-one care only, and it's not the workplace fault. It's just our country doesn't have enough therapists for all of your employees to get access to same-day therapy if they wanted it. And so, yes, it is immensely critical to start at the top and to train and support your leaders in having those conversations from the top. But in order for that to be successful, you need to also have solutions readily available for employees once they are now open to seeking help, because nothing will dissuade them more than them being comfortable enough to get help, putting in the work to do so, and then being failed.
Absolutely. And one of those solutions that comes to mind, and maybe you can elaborate on that one a little bit, is perhaps starting a mental health ERG or employee resource group at work. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I agree with the notion of making this just as prominent of a discussion as other ERG programs are. And I, again, push for, we need to then offer training and support to those individuals leading the ERG, because being an in-house therapist is a dramatically difficult job. I don't know how you can do that alongside being an accountant for a company or a software engineer for a company. So I think it is a problem that requires much more training than any non-clinician has. Even a lot of clinicians don't have enough adequate training to do it themselves. Yeah. So I encourage all workplaces to recognize the training needed to do that and to be thoughtful and creative around what does it take to deploy that training at scale? How do we make it accessible to individuals who are not personally comfortable working through their mental health, right? If I'm not comfortable doing it with my friends, my God, I'm not going to talk about it with my boss, right? With a coworker who I kind of hate, right? So I encourage folks, like, you need to be very human when it comes to this. And I think a lot of healthcare, unfortunately, we've removed the humanization of it and just deployed benefits, and they do work out and it's fine. But mental health care is so different from the rest of healthcare. It lives on vulnerability and intimacy that is not nearly as prevalent in primary care or other formats of health. And it is so critical when we think about innovating on solutions and deploying those solutions that we have the person in mind who is not comfortable, in fact, who is insecure talking about issues and insecure doing it on their own, let alone in the workplace. And as a result, I think we need to be much better at meeting people where they're at to really get them the care they need. Yeah,
absolutely. One last question in regards to potential solutions here that we could explore, right? And this is in line a little bit with promoting a healthier connection to work. So I'm sure you're aware of the recent experiment that was completed in England, right, in which the work week was reduced to 4 days, and the results have been dramatic. Dozens of these companies that participated are now going to permanently reduce the work week to 4 days. So what are your thoughts on the 5-day work week? Is that going to be a dinosaur anytime soon?
Yes, it's an interesting point. I'll start by saying that we rolled out a 4-day work week about 6 months ago. And it's I believe in it in theory. We have yet to really see its outcomes in the same way, and it's harder because we're a smaller organization. I think it's possible there is help there, but I think the reality is we still spend, when it comes to supporting mental health in the workplace and alleviating the costs that mental illness drives. Yes, time is helpful and rest is helpful, but people need serious support. And that support still needs to come. It's not solved by having another day off work. It is still the case that 76% of American workers have a symptom of mental illness, and there are not enough doctors to support 90% of those individuals in need, right? And so, yes, I am a huge advocate for innovative solutions, and the 4-day work week is one I admire, and we are learning and learning from at Real as well. And I also want to be real with this group and sharing there's more to it than removing a working day. Mm-hmm. And we have to be honest about delivering feedback to what today's support systems look like in order to ever get to a solution that really works.
All right. Excellent. Well, in the short period of time that we have left here, are there any valuable resources that you can share with our audience?
Yes, of course. I mean, as I shared, I feel like I've worked in every format of the mental health care system and really brought those learnings to a lot of what we're doing at Real. And what those learnings bring us to is a more anonymized format of care that is really predominantly driven by an innovative recommendation engine and content strategy that people utilize dramatically more than other benefits. So I certainly recommend Real and checking Real out. And the website is join-real.com. And from there, we actually have a few emergency benefits we recommend as well from Crisis Text Line. We've probably done the best job at offering 24/7 crisis help. That's because they don't depend on therapists. That's one I really highly admire.
Okay, fantastic. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. So thank you so much for joining us, Ariella. This has been a great and important conversation, I think. And for you out there, we hope you enjoyed it as well. If you'd like more information on Real, please visit them at join-real.com, as Ariella was just saying. We also hope that you'll join us at SHRM Tech next week. And actually, we're going to have a panel on mental health in which you, Ariella, you're going to be participating. So we're very much looking forward to doing that in person. So thank you all for tuning into the SHRM Labs Workplace Tech Spotlight. If you enjoyed this live stream, please share it using the hashtag SHRM Labs, Workplace Tech, and SHRM. Visit us at shrmlabs.com to stay up to date, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.